Hey everyone, this is Peter 24/7 from Project Ghost with another WarDragons diary. I'm going to do something today that I don't normally do and talk about politics in Atlas and my thoughts regarding the current imbalance. I encourage people to share this with the community and start to push for change. I don't expect many to agree with what I am saying here, but I do hope it fuels conversation. Let's try to keep comments constructive and on topic. Please don't troll my channel or I will remove the comment. I'll start with the hottest topic in WarDragons, Dreadnought. Looking through the forums, there are so many posts regarding whether or not they should have been able to keep the team name with Atlas access after disbanding the team and recreating it. As much as the constant poking and raids that happen on my team, I actually do not believe that this is a bad or unfair thing. What people fail to realize is that they could have just dropped the players and castles and kept the team's shell where it was. In disbanding and recreating the team, they lost what I would think is billions of reserve guard, 50 sets of infrastructure, and all the rank points associated with the team. When No Mercy Order disbanded years ago, how long did it take all of Diamond 1 to war them out of Diamond? If Dreadnought were to stay in Diamond as a shell, they would be warred for months before they ended up dropping in leagues, creating yet another imbalance in the game. I do not think that Pocket Gems granting them Atlas was a bad thing, and it helped avoid a further unfair imbalance in not only the Atlas world, but Standard as well. My team bounces between Diamond 1 and Diamond 2, but if the rank points on the old Dread team were distributed amongst all of the Diamond 1 teams, the line between Diamond 1 and 2 would be drawn even further, creating a difficult time for teams wanting to make that push to contend with the giants of the game. With regards to Atlas, I believe that Dreadnought's presence, though still poking around, is far less than it was and has opened the door for many possible changes to happen to make this game I love more enjoyable again. Any team that has had any substantial pressure from Dreadnought in the past will probably agree with me that things, though still stressful, are a lot more manageable now that they are gone for the most part. I respect the decision that the team made, and I actually believe that the decision was made not only because they had gotten as close as anyone could ever get to beating an ongoing RPG, but somehow to inspire change in alliances and bring relative balance back to Atlas. Currently, though the departure of Dreadnought from Atlas, there is still a lasting legacy and mega alliance that was left behind. Fights on castles are far from fair, and it is driving people to want to quit the game. I fear that without change, a lot of long-standing players and great teams are at risk of falling apart or quitting altogether. There are many teams hiding under an umbrella, in possession of castles they did not bleed for. So many teams have buried themselves so deep that nobody can access them without smacking the shit out of smaller teams. For the protection from bigger alliances, from bigger assaults, passage is granted to large teams, and that passage is being abused and used to hit teams in multiple locations that would otherwise be considered safe, and when retaliation falls upon them for this, they cry and complain about the repercussions of their actions without even knowing the whole story. 20 or more Diamond teams are pooling together their strength, and though the players on these teams may not realize it, the leadership must be aware that these targets are being pounded by multiple TAs in multiple locations, all times of the day. If you take a look at the political spectrum, the largest imbalance is there in the top tier. I think that there are a few steps that can be made to help break down the effectiveness of mega alliances and encourage teams to work more within their 5TA. First, accessibility. Make every team accessible in a reasonable manner. This is an easy change that can be made. Implement a code that forces every team to have at least 10% of their castles as access castles rounded up. This means that if your team is active enough to have 1 to 10 castles, at least 1 needs to be accessible. If your team wants 11 to 20 castles, since we are rounding up, at least 2 need to be accessible, and so on and so forth. This would prevent bigger teams having to steamroll and extort smaller teams into giving them the access they need. The first castle that can be conquered in each bracket would need to be an accessible castle. If the team were to drop below the access threshold, they would need to acquire another gateway first before conquering another concealed castle. Secondly, passage. A fight on a castle is almost never 1-on-1 or 5-on-5. It is the attacking TA versus how many teams can be rotated onto passage. This allows for smaller teams to sit safely on their gifted castles without fear of ever losing them. It is never a fair fight. I have always encouraged my team and TA to handle assaults on our castles within the TA regardless of how painful it can be. Access castles can still be reached to help protect your friends, as everyone would be accessible if the first point was implemented. But teams would be forced to fight within their TA on internal battles. If you have a common enemy and you want to help, go hit their castles, the people who are attacking the castle. Want to give gold to someone? Make castles and bank accessibility what it used to be, where you fly to the castle, and once you're on the castle, you can make a deposit. Thirdly, glory scaling. There are many teams that sit with a low APR on far more castles than many others because alliances provide them with castles they do not necessarily need or earn. Scale glory based on not only APR and level, but a combined average of APR, Atlas rank, and level. I have always been a firm believer of leagues representing your team's APR. My team, for example, my team's current APR fluctuates between 15 to 22. Our current league rank is 36, bouncing between Diamond 1 and 2, and our Atlas rank is 30. All relatively close, and our team activity and size reflects this in our defensive measures. If your team is big enough to hold more castles with more value than a diamond team, then your team is big enough to contend with those teams. As mentioned earlier, teams are being gifted castles they do not earn, and because of their team size, they don't have to worry about being hit by bigger teams, as it yields no glory. Fourthly, surrendering castles to save resources. Many teams have been burying themselves very deeply and surrendering castles to shell teams to avoid loss, as opposed to actually fighting. I suggest that moving TAs be locked down to at least the same frequency as surrendering castles. If teams want to drop castles that badly to a shell team to avoid losing a few guard, then they can, to a few guard, they can chill with that shell team for a week and deal with other repercussions defensively. Another option for this is to lock the castle guard onto the castle. If the castle is surrendered, the guard currently on it are lost completely. So right now you get, I believe, 75% back. So if you surrender a castle, you lose all of those guard. So it's less incentive for you to just dump it, and it's more incentive for you to actually fight for it. Lastly, discouraging multi-TA assaults and defense. Just like the Sieger debuffs, the castle and Primarchs belonging to the hosting TA debuff Primarchs not belonging to the TA by a certain amount based on how many TAs are there. So if you've got, let's say, for each additional TA that's there, 10% or something like that. So if you have 10 TAs show up to defend your castle, those teams are going to essentially have Primarchs that do nothing. So it discourages people from throwing thousands of teams into the defense, and it also discourages teams from assaulting with thousands of teams on one castle. So this would discourage teams supporting the castle to come, as they would be significantly weaker, and would also discourage teams from attacking with multiple TAs at the same time. This is just an idea I'm throwing out to try to get people to start talking about it. Though I do understand that change is hard, I also firmly believe that change needs to happen. Thank you all for watching. Let me hear your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about this. And like I said earlier on, please share this vlog. Let's get people talking. I do see a lot of suggestions coming up in the forum, and talking about it is good. Hopefully we'll be heard. Hopefully changes will happen. And I look forward to seeing what everybody thinks or says. I'm not saying people need to agree with me. A lot of the things I talked about in this will affect my team just as much as it affects others. So I do think that getting rid of mega alliances in some way, shape, or form will benefit. I've always kind of hoped for an Atlas world where there's no allegiance to anybody and it's 5TA for 5TA. I do understand that there's a lot of teams that would suffer from this, but I think it would make it a lot more fun. So don't forget to hit the like button, don't forget to hit subscribe, and I will talk to you all later. Bye for now.